convicted drug dealer who sold a fatal combination of heroin and fentanyl is going to spend the next 3 years in jail for his crimes. One mom says that's not enough. The dealer sold drugs to her son that led to his fatal overdose. She wants maximum sentencing. This really brings up an interesting topic we wanted to delve into, which is prosecuting the drug dealer for potential murder in cases like this. The mom said, I just want justice for my son. I want to take into account that my son has a 6-year-old daughter that will never see him again. So many issues in this debate. Obviously, a drug death needs a dealer and it needs a user.
Yes.
Where does the responsibility lie? And I mean, I don't have any answers. I do not know the right way to approach this.
Expert, I'm just sort of throwing from the hip, shooting from the hip, but I mean, it's foreseeable. You can expect that if you're selling drugs, heroin laced with fentanyl, people are going to die.
That's an excellent point, Drew, about the foreseeability, but there's something called but-for causation in the law. And as you know, with a lot of individuals who have drug addiction, they have a lot of health problems. So they may have compromised organs or other medical problems. So even if you can pinpoint that a drug dealer sold this person the drug and they die of an overdose, the question is, but for that drug that person took, would they have died? And that becomes a difficult question for prosecutors.
Did they force them to take a certain amount?
Well, it's not just that, but it's also, what about the other health problems? Was the death caused by a compromised liver?
Thing that I sold you, yeah.
And that becomes a very difficult thing for prosecutors who have to prove causation. So, but states, I think some of the positive here is that 20 states have drug-induced homicide laws, which means if a prosecutor can prove that but for causation, a drug dealer is not going to just be charged with possession and intent to distribute or distribution or manufacturing, but they can actually be charged with homicide. And that's a really important weapon.
I'm curious if
is this working in those states as a deterrent?
Drug selling, which is...
I mean, it's a heck of a deterrent if you're a drug dealer and you know that you're lacing your product with something that will potentially kill. It would have to serve as a deterrent.
Well, yes, absolutely. But also remember that when we went to Ohio, we've spoken about this on the show before, when we went to Ohio because of the opioid epidemic in the United States, they told us that sometimes they will put fentanyl in the drugs and they will allow someone to overdose because that will in turn encourage people to go to them, because really if someone is addicted to drugs, they're looking for that high. That's what they want. They want to get right there. And so they're thinking, oh, that's where I want to go. I want to go to that dealer because they have more than just plain heroin.
And that's what we're seeing these states starting to prosecute drug dealers for a homicide when you have these overdoses, because this opioid crisis, which is engulfing the nation, and we're seeing more and more people dying from these drugs that have been laced, in these really horrific cases.
And also, I feel like when I hear about how this mom is, fighting for justice, it makes me realize that it's not just about that individual. When we hear about an individual being addicted to drugs, of course, we say, how can we help that person? And that's very appropriate. But we forget sometimes that there might be a 6-year-old little girl crying herself to sleep, or there may be a mother lying in bed praying that they don't get a call with this particular news. So it's a family affair when it comes to these addictions.
But it's also, look, this is a really difficult subject. It is not black and white, because it's, there is some element of responsibility on the party of someone who is, although we've profiled on the show, when you're addicted to drugs, you're going to do anything to get it. But again, I think that's where the law is going to be really, really interesting to see how this plays out in all the states, because it's not as simple as someone pulling a trigger and murdering someone else. There's so many elements to this.
Yeah, these are difficult cases. They're difficult cases to prosecute, and there's stories and arguments on both sides. And you're right, there are a lot of people who say that person that's addicted has responsibility. They bought the drugs. They knew that drugs, they know the consequences of
because
using
what's
drugs.
going to happen soon, and this is where things get even more interesting, is if they're going to prosecute the drug dealer, then it's potentially the person who bought the drugs hands it to their friend, the drug dealer, the law really needs to to kind of evolve here so there's some consistency to me. But I think the one thing that I think we can all agree on is that with the black market fentanyl being so deadly, carfentanil, the elephant tranquilizer, when these things are starting to show up in local drug supplies, we know the death rate is skyrocketing, and someone has to take responsibility for that.